What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Truth in Movies. I'll be your host, JayDreamerZ, as usual. Tonight we're going to break down a classic, Coneheads. Looks good? Okay. If you guys are unsure what the diamond ticket is all about, go over to chasingtheapocalypse.com. I'll go ahead and put a post after the show. I'll put a post up there with a link to my website where you guys can check it out, see what it's all about. Basically, it's going to be a brand new show where I go around the world chasing the apocalypse, looking for clues and evidence and proof of the plasma apocalypse itself. It's going to be professionally filmed and everything, and I'm very excited about it. Now, let's go ahead and jump into today's movie, Coneheads. As usual, it's brought to you by Mt Maru. Mt Maru, the quintessential mountain of the world, Excelsior, the highest, loftiest mountain at the center of the earth. On many ancient maps, it's actually depicted, especially those from medieval times. It's called Rupus Nigra, the Black Rock. I like to call it Mount Maru, M&M, or 33. It's said to be 33 miles in circumference. Now notice all the stars that go around, making a little dome over and around Mount Maru. This is basically the Garden of Eden, and this is the holy mountain at the center of Hyperborea, the Garden of Eden, Atlantis. We'll talk more about Atlantis here in a bit. But this is the plasma sheath that goes around and protects that particular land, that holy land, if you will. It's got 22 stars. This represents oftentimes the 22 initial letters of the Phoenician and Paleo-Hebrew alphabet, which is actually quite interesting. The legends say that the letters of that alphabet were given to mankind from the crown of God, or from the head of God, from a fiery flame, or from the burning bush, you could say too. Now we jump into the movie and we see space. Anytime they show you space, they're showing you, remember, the dome. They're showing you our sky up right above us. Not so much deep space or outer space, but the movie's all about aliens. So we're going to learn a lot about what aliens are. Are aliens real? There's a lot of talk about aliens lately. There's a car alarm going off in my neighborhood. There's a lot of talk about aliens on the news lately. Some people believe in them. Some people don't believe in them. I will probably end up doing a special live stream later this week all about aliens. I'll explain to you what I believe aliens to be, whether or not I believe they are real or not. You're free to share, your thoughts about that in the chat if you would like to, but that's where we're going to begin. We're going to talk about the aliens. Now, the movie starts off by showing you a television show. This is the old Star Trek. This is Captain Kirk in his heyday, in his prime, fighting off this classic humanoid reptilian on an episode known as Arena. Now, the arena of our world is at the center of the world. It's that same island that has Rupus Nigra at the center of it, surrounded by high and lofty mountains in almost a perfect circle all the way around. Like I said, Atlantis, the Garden of Eden, Hyperborea. This is the place where people gather together for the final war, or for Ragnarok, or for Armageddon, etc. This is the meeting place. It is this Arena Island. It's a huge country island at the center of the world. It's the meeting place as well. The meeting place of the survivors from the Southlands that go towards the middle, or go back towards the center place, as the Hopi Nation would call it. From those who drop down from above. We're going to talk a lot more about those beings that drop down from above. Those are the more classic aliens, okay? But then we also have other forms of aliens known as interterrestrials. There are entire civilizations that live under the earth. They're going to come right up from within Mount Maru, and they're going to, and other places up there in the Arctic as well. And they're going to make themselves known. So we'll have a clash of all these different types of humanoids all meeting up together. Now, in the show Star Trek, in this iconic episode, we have this reptilian humanoid fighting off Captain Kirk. Kirk means circle, just if you're wondering. It also is where we get the word church from. So the family circle, the family church, the tribal circle, etc. But they show you this rock formation time and time again on many, many different movies. I think they're called the Vasquez rocks, if I remember correctly. And it's interesting because they keep on putting this in the public eye. They want this image of these rocks at this almost 45-degree angle. Looks like they're lifted up out of the ground or something. They want that burned into your memory. They keep putting that in all of these different movies. And I believe there's a good reason for it. I believe it harkens back to an apocalyptic event where electricity comes down from the sky and rises up from the earth terrestrially. I call that geoplasmos. And it shapes the earth. It actually lifts the earth up and petrifies the mud in place, solidifying it and freezing it in time. Now, obviously, we have the reptilian alien connection with the reptilians versus the humanoids. I have lots of different thoughts about that, but I'll save it for my alien presentation later this week. But obviously, a lot of people are familiar with the reptilian humanoids. Here are the Vasquez rocks, location of many different films, such as the television show Westworld was featured. This is where they showed you that church that was buried all the way up by mud, by the way, which is another shout out to the mud floods. This is actually a whole church. That's just the steeple of the church. The rest of the church is underground. That goes back to the plasma apocalypse. Whenever the earth shakes as the inner earth gases are released, as our atmosphere depressurizes, and therefore, and subsequently, also the inner earth gases depressurize, those gases rush up through the cracks and crevices of our world, and they cause the entire earth to shake, and all the liquid, all the water rises up to the surface, and it mixes with the sand and the debris and the soil, and it causes a swampy, muddy mess up here on the surface. Now, when you have electricity coming down from above, it will pull up that swampy, muddy mess as it will be attracted to it. And then whenever that circuit is established and the connection is made, that electricity will petrify that mud in place, in different shapes and in different formations. Here we have an example of the same rock formation from Austin Powers. Some old Western. I couldn't really find the name for this one. There's lots of different movies. The Flintstones. The Flintstones is... I haven't broken down that movie, but I have done an entire special about the Flintstones as being apocalypse survivors from the modern world. They're the modern Stone Age family. So it's actually modern people that survived an apocalyptic event, and they were thrown back into a Stone Age because they're survivors of an apocalypse. You can find that one on my Plasma Apocalypse playlist. Here we have Bill and Ted. This is part 2, whenever they die and they go to hell and they go all the way up into heaven and stuff. Here's my backyard. This is called the Garden of the Gods. There's rock formations like this all around the world. It almost looks like the back of a titanic stegosaurus or something. Huge plates just sticking up out of the ground. Modern academics will tell you that this is the result of wind and rain over billions and billions of years. I will tell you that these were made instantaneously. Who made them? Dragons. What do I mean dragons made these things? I'll explain to you. They're actually, according to the legends, petrified dragons, sometimes called petrified giants, sometimes petrified titans. Oftentimes, people knew that these were the markers of beings that were once there in this location. Now, in the back, you can actually see NORAD in the background. This is Cheyenne Mountain. I can see it from my backyard. This is the hollowed out mountain that I believe to be the actual symbolic location of the TV show called Paradise, which I'm hoping to probably break that one down too, because it's pretty interesting. All the people, all the elite and rich people, they carved out this mountain. They basically lived in there, making it a doomsday bunker. Here we have, so way back there off to the left, this is the Garden of the Gods that I just showed you, but that whole rock formation stretches across the countryside, all across Colorado Springs, and comes all the way up here to another location that's a part of that same rock formation. This one's called Red Rocks Open Space. I've gone there many times with my son, and we go hiking and riding mountain bikes and stuff, but you can see that angle, and they're all sticking up, almost as if there was a wind or something pushing it off in that direction. You see that, how they're frozen in time, frozen in place? Now, this is a classic example from a great channel that I've referenced many times. I don't think he still uploads or is active on YouTube, but his name is Mr. Too Tough 2. And he used to do lots of different scientific experiments with electricity on different types of soil and sand and mud and clay and stuff. So he would shock it to see what kinds of shapes it would produce and see what kind of effect it had when he put an electroplate directly above the sand and didn't touch it. The sand rose up and it started gathering together, forming these pillars and columns. And then when he took away the electric plate, they stayed like that, creating, you know, buttes and mesas and stuff like that. Now, you can try this at home too. If you have a lot of static electricity in your fingers or on a balloon or something, and you put it close to the sand, but not touching it, the sand will actually defy gravity and it will raise up. It will be lifted up through electromagnetics and it will be attracted to the hand. It's the same concept. Now imagine long ago when the dragons roamed about in the skies during the Dark Ages, the last time that we had the dragons around. The dragons were up in the sky, and the dragons were fearsome, fiery beasts that would also shape the land. They would live in cavernous systems and protect conductive metals like gold and silver. They were seen in the sky. They were associated with fire and burning and electricity and lightning. Now, over time, the dragons became cartoonified. They didn't always look like that. They didn't always have huge bat wings and mustaches from the Japanese versions, or legs, or arms. The further back in time we go, the dragon starts to look more and more like a worm, a snake, or specifically, a serpent. They were called the fiery serpents. Not just the fiery serpents, but the fiery flying serpents that undulated slowly in the skies above and were known to be dangerous, so people would put out huge bells and towers to ring them and to disrupt the pressure in the atmosphere to get rid of these dragons, and sometimes they were called trolls or giants and other things too. But if we go further and further back in time, you can see they started to personify whatever was really up there. What really was up there was plasma. But people didn't understand what that was, so they would put a little face on it and a little mustache, and as that plasma drew closer and closer to the ground and left its abode in the heavens, they started to put feet on it and legs. Oftentimes they would have a ball in the mouth of the dragon, or the dragon would be chasing after some sort of a fiery ball. That fiery ball is a ball of plasma. It's known in modern times as ball lightning. And so the ball lightning would move across the sky, streaking across the sky, and it would leave a trail of ionized gas behind it. This was the dragon itself. This was and were the fireworms of old. But like I said, over time, they put wings on it to let you know. The wings are symbolic. It didn't actually have wings and flap around and fly around or anything. They put wings on it to let you know, just like cherubs or anything else in the old world that they would stick wings on. It's not falling. It's not getting sucked up or anything. It is levitating in the air. So the wings were symbolic of levitation, right? So they would put a couple of feet down on there at first. Sometimes they would start adding more and more feet. Oftentimes they would put little spikies on it because it's electrical in nature. And oftentimes they would draw it as a snake. This was considered a dragon. It's specifically the serpent. A serpent and a snake are much different creatures. We call snakes serpents today because of their resemblance to plasma filaments that fly through the air whenever the atmosphere depressurizes, and all of the atmosphere in the plasmasphere up and around our sky enters down into our world and grounds itself to the earth and floats about. So these are the dragons that scorched the earth, that petrified people, that had magical properties, that guarded treasure and changed the surface of the world as we know it. Now the movie, we get back to the movie and we have this fighter pilot and they're chasing after a UFO, just like we've seen in modern times, right? All the footage of UFOs being chased by fighter pilots. This fighter pilot's call sign is Werewolf. He says, "Werewolf, the fight camera's on now." Now, why would the werewolf be chasing the UFOs? Because there is an intimate connection between werewolves, dog people, or in ancient times, whenever there was a high amount of electromagnetism in our atmosphere and different places of power around the world that would give off high amounts of radioactivity and radioactive metals and radioactive crystals and stuff like that. So there was a lot of radioactivity during the time whenever the sky opened and allowed all of those cosmic plasmas and gamma rays and x-rays and stuff like that down into this world. The human beings were transformed, many of them, not all of them, but depends on your location. Some people, entire nations were transformed, became very hairy, became disfigured in some places. All kinds of mutations occurred. If it happened back then, it's going to happen again. These were known as the dog tribe, or the dog-headed people, the cynocephali. They are the werewolves. They are where we get the modern werewolf myths. So why would the werewolf people be chasing the UFOs? What's the connection between werewolves wanting to fight aliens? I'll make the connection for you. Now, this is the Wolfman. This is the classic Wolfman from antiquity. This is how the werewolf first was portrayed. Not so much with the huge long snout and just, an overly cartoonified example of the modern werewolf. This was the Wolfman. The Wolfman was seen in antiquity. This right here is an actual drawing of a Wolfman, or a cynocephaly, or a dog-headed person. Sometimes they were called lion-headed people. They went by many different names, cat-headed people. And this is an actual real person and dressed up like nobility because they treated them as if they were nobility. Why? Because they tended to be tall, very strong, and live for a very long time. They were said to come from the far north. That is just outside of the Garden of Eden, just outside of Hyperborea and Atlantis and stuff. Remember, I said there was that plasma sheath wrapping around that whole island? That plasma sheath shoots out X-rays to the nearby inhabitants, and it basically mutates them, those who live outside of the camp of the saints, as the Bible would call that particular location. Now, these people came from that region, so they were treated with respect by the nobles in the Southlands. They were not dog people at all. They weren't dogs, part dog, part human or anything. They were mutants. They had a genetic mutation called hypertrichosis. Here's an example over here. There's other forms, medical issues where people grow hair in different places. Hypertrichosis is whenever you have excessive hair growing in places where the hair doesn't typically grow. And it's also called werewolf syndrome. So these people lived for a very long time. They lived in the far north, and they didn't quite live at the extreme north. Oftentimes when they came here into the Southlands, as they were pushed away through the apocalypse itself, it forced everyone out of Eden, out of Hyperborea, and the surrounding and neighboring islands. They were all forced to flee and come further and further south to become nomadic, to become gypsies and nomads and wanderers and vagabonds, traders. These are actual real people. None of this is AI. These are real photographs and drawings from antiquity of actual people who have hypertrichosis. Now, this is the cartoonified version. Why am I showing you a vampire? I'm sure you guys all recognize this as being a vampire, and the werewolf. The vampire and werewolf clash. I write about this in great detail in my second book called Ancient Oblivion, Return to Hyperborea. You can grab that on my website, JayDreamerZ.com, or you can check it out on Amazon too. But there is this battle between those who have hypertrichosis outside of the Garden of Eden versus those who lived inside of the Garden of Eden, right? We have those who were allegedly the beautiful ones. They make them look all ugly and stuff too. But I'm going to get more into that as we talk about the aliens. In short, the vampires are the aliens. And I'll make that connection as we go. That brings us to the title of the film, Coneheads. And you can see them popping up out of the water there, almost looking like little pods. Maybe a shout out to pod people. Now, they crash land their UFO. Something happens to the UFO, it crashes, and the father Conehead, I don't remember their names, but the father Conehead, he wants to get a room at a hotel for the night. So he's trying to check into this hotel. Let's take a look at how he's dressed. You can see the huge popped collar, right? Now, all of these things, the hoodies, the hoodie that I wear, there's a reason why I enjoy wearing hoodies and stuff too. The reason he has this collar popped up so big is not because the aliens are just fashionable and they want to pop their collars and look cool as we kind of do today. That's called the elven standard of beauty, or alien standard of beauty, because they're one and the same basically. But they pop their collars for a reason, the same exact reason why vampires pop their collars or have huge things that they invent to guard their neck and their back and stuff. What is it guarding it from? I'll tell you in a minute. But as you can see, Dracula, all of the popular vampires of old will have huge collars. Not because they're noble, some people might say that, but there is a connection. I mean, they were noble, actually. But there's a reason why. It's practical. All of these things that have become tradition in the world today used to be practical. The practicality behind it is it blocked out the sun. It kept their skin on their neck, right? As the sunlight is coming down their shoulders and their neck and stuff, they would also have things to block out the sun from their face. They would wear veils. They would have parasols and whatnot. But these beings are photophobic. Photo meaning light and phobic meaning fear. However, it's not a simple fear of the light. It's not a fear of sunlight, right? Photophobia is an actual irritation from the sun. It means that the sun will burn you and hurt you and cause blemishes and spots and stuff very, very quickly, much longer than just like a natural sunburn that a normal person would get. Okay, these people tend to be like almost albino, just lacking so much light, and they're very sensitive to the light. They usually have to wear a lot of sunglasses and stuff like that. But the sunlight would really burn them. It would hurt them. It would cause them pain just to be out in it for a few seconds. So they would wear protective gear. They would pop their collars up. That's the whole reason they had collars. They invented the collars. They would put up the collars, and it's not because regular humans were out working on the farm for so long or whatever. No, they have melanin in their body, and they can handle being out in the sun, or at least we used to be able to. But they would stay away from the sunlight because it would physically harm them, which is why they would dress up in, gaudy type dress, covering their arms, covering everything, even putting stuff on them, makeup and stuff to protect their faces. Now, the wife Conehead, she goes over to this Pepsi machine and she tries to like get some quarters from it. So she bows down and electricity shoots out of the cone from the top of her head. So we see that there's a connection between these alien beings, these albino pasty white alien beings, which by the way, they almost always portray these people as Caucasian. They're almost always played by Caucasian people in the movies. And there's a reason for that. It's not because Caucasian people rule the world and we just want to be number one or anything. It's because they're the closest thing to the color of the actual alien beings. Okay. Some of them. I'm not saying there aren't other colors of aliens out there. I'm just talking about these particular ones. So they are full of electricity, filled with energy, electrical beings. Why? Well, because they come from a place that is electrically amplified. That is the heavens above. That is beyond the dome, beyond our sky, in between worlds where electricity is constantly passing from place to place in where I call the fractalverse or the mind of God, the greater existence above. Full of electricity, ambient electricity all over the place. And because of that, it energizes whoever lives out there so much and to such a degree that people cannot die. They live forever up in the heavens. Now, many of those people who are related to beings that came down from the skies, they want to live forever. They're trying to get back into the heavens. They're trying to break into heaven itself. They're trying to break open the firmament, the dome, the substance of what we call the moon, the projection in the sky. The substance of that is the firmament itself, casting its own projection into our sky as it reflects light from the earth. So we see a little map of the earth up there in the moon too. Anyways, they're full of electricity, right? They're not the only ones. Remember how we decoded and we broke down Buckaroo Banzai? In the movie Buckaroo Banzai, this guy right here, what's that actor's name? John Lithgow, right? John Lithgow plays an alien creature that looks human, right? But they're not. They're called lectroids. And he feeds off of electricity. He actually hooks up electricity and puts it on his tongue and clamps and starts electrocuting himself. Not because he just enjoys being tortured, because he's energizing himself. And they understand how these types of things work. Electrical productivity and plasma physics and stuff, and how its relationship with the very soul, the very spirit, the body, the synapses of the brain, the mind, the neurons, they're all firing off. A lot of these very pasty, pale, white-skinned beings from other places are seen as Gothic. This happens to be Uncle Fester, one of the newer versions of Uncle Fester. But we all know in the Addams Family movies, which I also decoded, Uncle Fester is just imbued with electrical power. You know what I mean? We always see, like, this is the classic Uncle Fester I grew up with. He can put a light bulb in his mouth and it will turn on. Why? Because he's an electrical being. He's electroid. He has electricity running throughout his body in so much abundance that he can use it and manifest it, right? So that's what these people also represent, are these electroids. So the guy says, how are you going to pay for your room? And the woman says, we shall remunerate with metallic tender discs. And then they put a bunch of quarters. I've actually never seen this movie, to tell you the truth, until I decoded it. So high five to the person that recommended it for me. Thank you very much. The way they talk is just incredible. I didn't used to really watch that a lot of Saturday Night Live, which is where this actually came from. It was a skit on Saturday Night Live. But they talk like this. We shall remunerate with metallic tender discs. And it's quarters. That's what they are, though. They're metallic tender discs. Now, I'm going to talk about the symbols and stuff on their jacket and all that stuff here in a bit. Now, he says, do not despair, primate. We will be rescued. So they're waiting for a rescue. They're stuck on Earth. The reason for this is because the only time that any beings can come down into our world, remember, they have to get past the dome. I believe there's a physical dome to the sky. Okay, I believe there's actually a dome made of ice, which I'll talk about in a minute. If you don't subscribe to the dome theory, that's okay too. Just know that there are Van Allen belts, and there are high levels of radiation, and there's the Earth's electromagnetic field, and there's other things too that are sort of acting as a blocker for beings to escape and to come in. Okay. Whether or not you believe in space and you believe in NASA and all that agenda, that's fine. I've been there. We all have our path to walk. I personally am on a different place where I believe there is a dome, just like the ancients before me and before them all did, going back to the beginning of time. But they're looking to be rescued. Now, they can't leave the Earth, not because their spaceship is crashed. The symbolism in the movie is that once these beings come in and the electromagnetic field of the Earth goes back up and the dome reconstitutes itself, right? Because the dome will break open, and that's what physically allows entrance into our world, and it's what physically allows people here to blast off and escape with the right technology or the right protection. They can't, because the dome has already sealed itself back up. Now they have to wait for another cycle to pass, a very long time, until they can be rescued and until they can leave and that there's actual hole in the sky again. He says, until then, we must adapt. I'll just read the subtitles for you. We will go forth and live undetected on Earth amongst the blunt skulls. Now, he says, we will go forth and live undetected amongst the blunt skulls. I'm going to talk about the Conehead and all that in just a bit. But the key thing here is living undetected amongst us, amongst normal, regular, native inhabitants to Earth, locals, right? Earthlings. They're going to live undetected amongst us. How can they possibly do that? One, obviously they have huge Coneheads and stuff, but that's not a problem. There's always a way. Oftentimes there's more than one way. Now, they're going to live amongst us undetected. That's the concept of They Live and many other, movies throughout the 80s and the 90s and even the 70s and pretty much all of the sci-fi movies. We've got aliens that live here amongst us. They look like us. They talk like us. Maybe the reason is they're us. Maybe they're humans. We just call them aliens because they're humanoids, human beings that look different through adaptation and other factors from other places that grew up under different circumstances. Maybe that's why. He says, we will blend in. So they start to blend in. Now, imagine this is him blending in. He goes to the dentist. He tells him to open wide. And lo and behold, look in his mouth. This guy has 3 sets of teeth. You see that? Now, in the movie, you might look at that and think, oh, that's funny. That's hilarious. Weird. He's got 3 sets of teeth. How strange. It's just a funny part of the movie. It's only funny to us. Like, laughing is a form of, like, expressing fear in a really low form of it. I'm all for laughing. but it's using your creative ability. That's why you're laughing so much. You really don't know what's going on. The 3 sets of teeth is not alien at all. It's a mutation. It's a mutation that human beings have in the world today. It's called hyperdontia. Hyperdontia mutations. It says here, hyperdontia is a dental condition affecting 1 to 4% of the whole population, characterized by the development of extra teeth caused by hyperactivity of the dental lamina. While often idiopathic, it is linked to genetic mutations. So, genetic mutations during a time, like I said, whenever the atmosphere is electrically amplified, you have to excuse the grossness of the tongue and people that don't take care of their teeth and mouth and stuff. But as you can see, this is a real picture. This really exists. There are people on Earth that have multiple rows of teeth, just like a shark. This guy, whoever this was, I think it was a 17-year-old, has 81. This mouth right here has 81 teeth. This is a real X-ray from real life. Here's different examples of multiple layers and rows of teeth. It's kind of gross, but a lot of times mutations are gross when we're not used to it, and especially when we don't understand them. But my point is, mutations abound during this particular cycle, during this particular time that we're about to go into, that we already left in a time once before. Those have all become legends and myths and cartoons and movies and stuff. You're about to live and relive the legends and myths and cartoons and movies if you survive. Now, we've got, they're going through this like old film of their memories growing up or whatever, because they're stuck on Earth. They're about to have a daughter and a baby, so they're showing like the family footage or whatever. And this is the alien dad dressed up as Santa Claus. Now we need to stop and examine the whole Santa Claus symbolism. We've got the hat, we've got everything. So let's take a look at it. But first I want to warn you, Mandela effect on the way. Santa Claus Mandela effect. The Mandela effect, for those of you who don't know, is a strange phenomenon where many people in the world, millions of people, clearly have a strong memory of something that definitely happened, even though they don't even know each other. But on the written record, on the historic record, it's not so. For example, you're seeing one right now. This is the fruit of the loom symbol. And we all remember, many of us, I will say, some of you might not. We all remember there was a cornucopia right behind this fruit. It looks exactly like that. I remember that. I had that on my tags, on my shirts and stuff, on my underwear. But now there is no, and there never was a cornucopia. That's the Mandela effect. So what is the Mandela effect with Santa Claus? Well, there's a great many that have to do with Christmas. Do you remember Santa Claus as being a human being? Or was Santa Claus a different type of humanoid? I remember Santa as being one of these, an elf. He might have been the leader of the elves, etc., but there are almost no references. I found one. These are like little residual effects from the Mandela effect. And shout out to C-3PO's Golden Calf, by the way. He's my Mandela effect man. And Suso, if you're watching, shout out to you too. But anyways, these are elves. These are traditionally what elves are depicted as and have been depicted as throughout antiquity. Like I said, very fair-skinned, very light-skinned. They're vampires as well. They're also the Gothic people. These are like, this is why you see the Addams Family and the Munsters and stuff. This is why they have such pale skin and stuff. It's not because they're recently risen from the grave or they're the living dead or anything. They're not. They're just from another place where they don't develop melanin in their skin. They have no point of focus called the sun to adapt to or anything. They also live to be very, very long. And when you live to be hundreds and hundreds of years, you don't really see the point of cutting your hair time and time again, week after week or whatever. Your ears continue to grow and continue to grow. Your nose will continue to grow and continue to grow as they do. They don't stop growing after puberty. That's why old people tend to have large noses and long ears. So these become the Ilu, or the people who are of the leaders, which is what Ilu means. The U in time turned into the letter V through pronunciation and dialect and a shift in how people pronounce things. So it went from Ilu to Ilva, okay, elven, the elves. Now, many of them look like this. sometimes they're portrayed as basically elves with tans, which is like Caucasian, like myself. Oftentimes, though, I think this is from Devil Boy. What's that movie called? Devil Boy? Is that the name of the movie? I forgot. But anyways, one of those movies. This guy's an elf too, and he's more of a truer color, like this phantazoid white is what I like to call it. It's an off-white, very grayish. Sometimes they throw a Japanese dude in there, or a black guy, or a Mexican elf, or whatever. But I feel like that's more political correctness, okay? Based on historic records, okay? I'm not saying they're Caucasian at all, so don't take sides. Don't want it to be your race or anything. They're not your race at all. They're not of this world, okay? They're aliens. That's literally what they are. Here's another one from this is Legolas from Lord of the Rings. This is from, I don't know if we did this one. Did we do this movie? I think we did. I think we did that movie. Anyways, here's another one, right? This guy's like a sort of a Peter Pan style elf. Peter Pan is also an elf, by the way. They're warriors too. The elven race were known to be warriors. They were fighters. They were fierce. They were intelligent because they lived for so very long. Imagine how intelligent you would be if you lived for so very long. Now, because they lived for so very long, they took a lot longer to reach different stages of puberty. So the younger elves who are in charge and put in charge of the human population are the ones we would be used to seeing. That's where we got our standard of beauty from. That's where the whole clean-shaven, look comes from. We want to look like the elves, or some people call them gods. It's the elven standard of beauty. Now, it's funny because they actually wanted to look more like us. Here's a character from a video game named Link. There's also a character named Link in the new Paradise show. But as you can see, he wears the Phrygian cap, which I'll talk about next. And he's got the pointy ears, etc. Now, Santa Claus, was he an elf or was he a human being? The one thing I can find that refers to him as being an elf was the night before Christmas, right? Or the visit from Santa Claus, or Saint Nicholas, as it's often called in antiquity. It says, he was chubby and plump, a right jolly old elf, and I laughed when I saw him in spite of myself. So they call Santa Claus an elf here, an old elf. That's the other thing too. The old elves are the ones that grow facial hair and beards and stuff. They start looking kind of gross over time if they get really old, like hundreds and hundreds of years old. But those are the ones that grow the beards and stuff. Those who are like 200 years old or less, they're gonna not have much of a beard at all. But jolly old Saint Nick, the elf or the human, oftentimes smoking a pipe and dressed up like a homeless guy. In antiquity, I'm dead serious, that's how they portrayed jolly old Saint Nick, or this version, who literally does look like, at the very least, a wizard from the Lord of the Rings, if you're familiar with that particular character. Or sometimes a straight up crackhead. I'm just, in my opinion, I'm being a little funny right now. But like, what is going on? Why is his face all red? And he's like, I don't know what's going on there. You know what I mean? But Santa Claus, they say he's related to, or basically Saint Nicholas. Now, Saint Nicholas, I think is a legend. I've never found any proof that Saint Nicholas physically actually existed on Earth. To me, he's more like, Alexander the Great, or Prester John, or like certain legendary figures, legendary humans that, were alleged to walk the earth long ago, especially a lot of the old saints. If you believe in them, fine, that's totally cool. It's neither here nor there. But as a matter of fact, believing whether or not somebody existed or not and who they were was a whole part of St. Nicholas's backstory. He existed during a time when the different bishops and elders, especially those of religion and politics, got together in early Rome in the 300s, 300 AD, 325 specifically, and they formed councils, religious councils. The very first of these, or one of the first, was called the Council of Nicaea, and Saint Nicholas, Santa Claus, was said to be at the Council of Nicaea. The whole purpose of this council was not, as is commonly thought, to put together the Bible or to canonize the Bible or anything that comes later with the Council of Rome and Trent and Hippo, but it was to figure out who this Jesus guy was. Was he divine? Was he actually God incarnate, or was he something else? And St. Nicholas was there. The legend goes that St. Nicholas actually slapped a guy for saying that Jesus was anything but divine. But I find that interesting that St. Nicholas was at that particular council, according to the rumors. I did find this image online of Santa Claus eating looks like the elf on the shelf. This is a parody, which, by the way, I'm now starting to sell parody cards. I'll talk about that another time, because I have to fix my GoFundMe account. I worded something wrong, so they like paused it. But anyways, I'll share that with you guys another time. This is a parody or a spoof of a classic painting of Kronos. So there was an ancient titan named Kronos, and the story goes that he wanted to devour Zeus because he heard that Zeus was going to somehow kill him, right? So he thought he was devouring Zeus, but he was actually swallowing a rock. And he chokes on this rock and he spits it back out. And when he spat it back out, he spat up all of the other gods and creatures that he had devoured or sucked up into the sky, because Kronos was a sky god, and he still is because planet's named after him and stuff. Remember this story when we end the movie. Kronos choking on the rock, okay? Because it's going to come back. There's also the classic Weird Al, The Night Santa Went Crazy, featuring Santa in front of the moon. Who is Santa Claus? I know it's nowhere near Christmas time, but I'm going to tell you. Santa Claus is not an elf. He is the leader of the elves. And one night, he does go crazy. Santa Claus is not a human being. Santa Claus is an ethereal phenomenon. And in short, the moon that you see up here in the sky, like I said, it has substance to it. It's a projection of the actual portion of the firmament that hangs down from the sky like a disco ball. That is the moon. That's the substance of the projection in the sky. So when you see the projection that we call the moon, the light in the sky, or the luminary, you're seeing a projected image of a portion of the dome above us. Now, what does that have to do with Santa Claus? When that dome breaks open, Santa Claus, being the red plasma that comes into our world, streaks in through the chimney of the earth and starts leaving gifts for certain people and changing other certain people into stone or charcoal, etc., burning the earth as it goes, but giving some abilities or mutations, gifts to some people, depending on how you see that. There's also the association with Santa and the moon. There's like a million pictures. They always have to put Santa flying in front of the full moon. Almost every time. Like, you can't have Santa at night with his reindeer, etc., without going in front of the moon, because this is his home, okay? He lives at the North Pole, right, which is the center of the world, where there's land at the center of the world. That's where the elves live, but he comes from the moon. He comes down and visits once in a blue moon, which is every other, during the apocalypse. People celebrate that time and have turned it into a holiday because they know the approximate season when it could happen, the apocalypse. But they don't know what year it's going to happen. Or at least that's the tradition. Now let's get back to the movie. He's dressed up as Santa Claus. Remember, this is an alien being. This is the elven alien being. They fly around in flying saucers. This is the classic flying saucer symbolism that is ingrained into your mind since you were a child. There is some kind of a blue beam that's a tractor beam. It's going to suck things up into it. And there's an association with this blue beam and anti-gravity, or objects floating, or cows floating, or dirt or people floating up into the heavens. Oftentimes they'll show you this same mothership hovering over with its blue beam a mountain. Light coming down from this object in the sky. That object, we have changed that. Through the telephone game of time, we have changed that object into a flying saucer, into a metallic disc from another world that's carrying, it's a craft and it has a propulsion system, etc., and so on and so forth, when it's not. That is the time when people can see the apex dome, that portion of the firmament that hangs down and droops down above us at the center of the world. And it's directly underneath Mt Maru. That shoots a beam of plasma that releases its gases from the inner earth, and they ionize and they shoot upwards towards the heavens. That light is not coming down out of the sky. It is leaving the mountain and going up towards the object in the sky. You'll see the symbolism all over the place. This is Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where for some reason there's all these people around the world that hear this signal. They feel a calling to return to this mountain. This mountain is the Devil's Tower in Wyoming here in the United States, but symbolically this is Mt Maru. And even in reality, they say this is created by basalt pillars and columns that are the inner plug of ancient lava, and the rest of the rest of the volcano. There used to be a volcano around that, according to academics, and it just withered away over time, wind and rain, and now it's just left the volcanic plug. That's how they describe this. That's not how that's created. This is created in the same way that those weird rock formations are created, except the difference is this has melted metals inside of it, which you know is lava. Lava is just melted metal mixed with soil and sand and other things in the earth. Rock doesn't typically melt, okay? It's the metals that are melting and mixing with the soil and the sand and the debris. And when we get lava. But anyways, as this rises up, the electricity, as we talked about the electricity, earlier, the electricity causes it to take these hexagonal forms, sometimes pentagrams and stuff. And the electricity itself will change the shape. It will actually, I forgot the name of that, but it's the effect that electrical fields and acoustics have on the shape of liquid forms or objects that are in liquid motion, like sand on a drum or something. What is that called? Somebody tell me in the chat. Somebody remind us all in the chat and help me out. I forgot what that's called. Anyways, I'm going to move on. So this is also showing to you the same symbolism, the mothership in the sky, sucking things up into it. This was shown to you in the movie Nope, which I also decoded. So in the movie Nope, you have this weird eye in the sky. That is the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati. That apex dome with the hole in it, depressurizing our atmosphere and things get sucked up into it, is the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati. Used to be pictured above the triangle, which is the unfinished pyramid, because it is an unfinished mountain. It is a volcano, and it releases the gases that shoot upward directly at the apex dome. Cymatics, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys in the chat. Now, in the movie, what was it called? Nope. Right? In the movie Nope, the dude looks up and this is what he sees. He sees the apex dome, but it starts to transform throughout the course of the movie into this alien creature. What you're really looking at symbolically is plasma that is leaking out of the opening in the apex dome itself. You can see it as feathery stuff or whatever. It actually makes a jellyfish, which is my logo of my channel here, but it's plasma that is leaking out of the apex dome. I'll come back to the apex dome in a minute. Now back to the movie. We see him dressed up as Santa Claus. Let's not forget the Phrygian cap. That sort of beanie that Santa wears, that beanie. It's called a Phrygian cap. It says here, Phrygia comes from the name of the Phrygians, an ancient people of Anatolia. It comes from the Greek word Phrygia, or phrygs, which is probably, if I'm guessing correctly, where we get the word freaks from, or freak. The Phrygian, the region where they lived became Phrygia, the Phrygs. Now, that PH at the beginning was actually originally from a Proto-Indo-European language, which is what the Phrygian people spoke. They spoke Proto-Indo-European, or back then it would just be called Indo-European. And the root of it is berg. You can see here, berg means fortified hill town. A hill town, meaning those who live in a valley and they have hills all the way around them fortifying where they live in the valley, or mountain, or it can, we also have another word that comes from that, burrow or berg, like Duckburg, from DuckTales. It has come to mean city, but it actually means place of the lofty mountains, which is where the people lived. Especially after the world flooded, those were the only places that people could live, was the lofty mountains. Now, Phrygus, from the Proto-Indo-European root berg, briges, Phryges. You see how there's it depends on how you move your lips. It means high elevated hill or mountain. Not just any hill, a high elevated hill or a mountain, just like Devil's Tower that I showed you earlier. One that is excelsior. as Stan Lee would say. One that rises up above the rest, one that shoots up out of the ground, not just your regular, gradual mountains. This is a high and lofty mountain. These were the Phrygian teams. It says here that the word Phrygian was an umbrella term, a catch-all to describe the vast ethno-cultural complex located mainly in the central areas of Anatolia rather than a name of a single tribe or people. So this was a name that was a catch-all name. It was an umbrella term. It was something they called a whole bunch of groups of people, all different colors, all different nationalities. But they all had something in common. What was the thing they had in common? They came from the same place. They migrated to the Southlands from the north. They came from Hyperborea, which was split into different islands and split into different tribes. Those tribes were forced out of Hyperborea and they stuck together. As they all spoke similar languages, they understood each other's customs and traditions. They might have been different colors and stuff, but they kept together and they moved around and they became nomadic and they went from place to place in the north. Says here, Tartary is the same type of label. So the Tartarian Empire, the people named the Tartars or the Tartarian Empire, the Tartars, became the most common name for the Central Asia people that had no connection with real ethnic groups of that region. It was a catch-all. It was an umbrella term for a whole bunch of different people that were all wandering around at the same time. Many of those people wore this style of a hat, of a cap that would have all kinds of extra back here. Today we might call this a beanie or whatever you want to call it. It's called traditionally a Phrygian cap, or some people say a Smurf hat because the Smurfs also have them, right? But this wasn't limited to like any one nationality or race of people. Many different people wore these. Now, over time, it became tradition to wear these. If you were related to these, if this stayed in your family as a tradition to wear it, much like the kappa that Jewish people would wear today. That just becomes tradition. People forgot why they even wear that in the first place. It was practical at some point in time. But over time, it becomes tradition to wear this particular style of hat. Why does it droop down so much on these particular individuals? Because they don't have cone heads. The cone-headed people are who these hats were made for. These are the cone-headed people that wore these hats. They had elongated skulls. They had huge, massive heads. They were oftentimes considered to be giants themselves, and oftentimes worshipped this this red circular disc right here. These are some images from ancient Egypt. There are the cone-headed people from around the world, but the Egyptians are known for having these particular long cone-style hats or whatever. I believe the simplest answer, Occam's razor, is, usually the correct one. The reason they wore long conical hats is because they had, at some point in the past, long conical heads. And if not them themselves, somebody in the past did, and they revered them enough to copy them. Now, speaking of these particular Egyptians and them being painted red and stuff, I do want to give a shout out to Robert Seffer, who also has his own YouTube channel. He did a really, really good presentation called The Red Root Race, and he talks about how they used to put on this red clay and paint themselves red and why they would do that. And it kind of ties into the plasma apocalypse that I talk about and radiation and stuff too. So that's pretty interesting. And there's the whole Ash Wednesday and covering yourself with ash and stuff like that too. So if you want to check it out, you can. I'm not endorsing him personally or anything. I'm just saying that the video is well done. Then, of course, we have the Smurfs, also the blue gods. So, for example, Osiris from ancient Egypt is oftentimes depicted as being blue. So we've got the Smurfs, their Phrygian caps, and they basically live in the Garden of Eden, which is why you have all these weird, gigantic plant life all over the place and stuff. It's not because the Smurfs are small, it's because their surroundings are gigantic. And, of course, we have actual records of human beings that purposefully have elongated their skulls. Sometimes we have skeletons that we found across the world with elongated skulls from gigantic humans. That's covered up oftentimes by the Smithsonian Institute and the Smithsonian Museums, which I'm going to actually do one of my very first episodes of Chasing the Apocalypse. I'm going to take all of you to the Smithsonian Museum, and we're going to check it out, and we're going to explore it. We're going to investigate the heck out of it, and I'm going to show you guys all of the most interesting, strange things, and I'm going to ask some hard questions while I'm there. But anyways, here are some of the elongated skulls that are found around the world, or I should say across the world. Now we get back to the movie. They're still playing their memories. They're at the beach, and you can see they've made all these little cubes or whatever, and they made this huge dome building or whatever, which is representative of Mt Maru. And then they show you the daughter. Remember, they were going to have a daughter, the Coneheads. So the father and the mother, Conehead, had a daughter. They go to the beach, and they get out a bottle of suntan lotion, and they just squirt a bunch of that, and they start applying it all over the daughter's head to turn her the true color that she should be, which is albino, right? They have to put all of the sunscreen on there. They're not just showing you, oh, it's just our tradition or whatever. You guys are starting to have to do this. When I was a kid, I didn't really need sunscreen at all. Nobody did. Okay, like sunscreen only started to become popular because the sun is intensifying. That sun is getting brighter and whiter and hotter to the point where it looks like, what do they call those really bright white lamps that they use at like Walmart and stuff? That's what today's sun looks like. Today's sun is not the same sun as when I grew up, when I was a kid. So we didn't need all the sunscreen or whatever. That's an omen of the apocalypse too. So you better watch out for the sun, I'm telling you right now. But the reason they're applying this, one, is to make her the correct color for aliens and stuff, phantazoids, etc. Those creatures that live outside of the dome, or in the liminal spaces between worlds, I should say specifically. And two, it's to show you that they are photophobic. They must put that white stuff all over their faces. They have to. Now, consider this. As they were nomadic and they infiltrated the Southlands, they would take over through a superior intellect and trading and stuff. They would become your nobles of today. I'll make that connection again in just a bit. Now, this is the father's logo for his driving company. He's got like he teaches driver's ed or something. This is his logo. It's the triple moon. Right? London, if you're watching, remember that video you showed? And there's the triple symbolism of the sky people and all the triple gods and stuff like that. This is the triple moon. It's actually a triple eclipse, which is known as a syzygy. And I covered that whenever we decoded, what was that movie? Or that show? Three Body Problem. Right? Now, where does that triple eclipse come from? It's actually triple circles. It just depends on where the light is hitting it. This is the apex dome. The apex dome has ruffles in it. It has ridges, just like the chips. They say ruffles have ridges, right? So does the apex dome. It has ridges. It's not just a full regular bowl. It's a bowl that has like ridges on it, like a pyramid. You know what I mean? And because it's reflective and there is water below and land below, it's going to reflect different angles of the earth below it. So when we look up, we will see Atlantis. When it's not really, Atlantis doesn't really look like that. Atlantis is Hyperborea and the Garden of Eden, which is a solid circular landmass that's cross-sectioned by 4 rivers, cut into 4 different islands. Main islands, I should say. So when we look up and we look at the reflective apex dome, reflecting light at different angles, we will see some of the angles will reflect the Arctic Ocean. Some of them will reflect the land below accurately. Some will go back to the ocean, and we see rings, and we say that is Atlantis up there in the sky. Now, they go back to eating mass quantities, consuming mass quantities or whatever, and they've got egos, all kinds of egos with like all these different toasters. They eat a lot. The reason they eat so much is probably, if I was to guess, because of gigantism, because traditionally these creatures are way bigger than we are today, and when you're way bigger, you have a higher metabolism. Anyways, so they're eating these egos, right? And egos are featured in a lot of these movies. Not just waffles, but egos specifically, the round waffles with the grid pattern in them. And I've covered the ego symbolism once before in great detail whenever I broke down and decoded. Man, I'm giving myself a lot of shout outs today. I decoded Stranger Things because remember 11, she likes the Eggos, right? Well, this is the Eggo Waffles original logo, the Eggman. We all know this is Humpty Dumpty. By the way, Eggo used to make mayonnaise, potato chips, all kinds of weird stuff. But this is Humpty Dumpty. Everybody knows that. You see the popped collar, right? Okay. That egg, I'm going to make a connection. Let's take a look at it. These are the Eggo Waffles. It comes from the Eggman. This is the old, I don't know if they have like a mascot now, but this was their mascot back in the day, in antiquity, a long time ago. It comes from the sky. Humpty Dumpty is the hump in the sky, the apex dome. Okay, remember, it's made out of ice. And whenever it breaks off and it comes crashing down or dumps down onto the earth, it will break open and shatter into icebergs. And people can't put it back together or whatever. And then it'll go right back up there because the dome will reconstitute itself. But anyways, that's Humpty Dumpty. That is also the Aegis or the Aegis. And there's different ways to pronounce that word. Okay, I like saying it my way. I'm going to call it the Aegis because it sounds like eggs, which is where I believe we actually get the name for that from. Okay, it's a mispronunciation of this Greek word. Now, what is the Aegis? This is the shield of Zeus. This is the shield that features Medusa's head on it. That if you look into it, you can see the snakes that come off of Medusa's head that turn people into stone, that instantly petrify people. Instant biological petrification. This is not myth. This is not fairy tale. This is not non-existent. It is not lies. It is the truth. And it has been twisted over time. It has been knotted up like Medusa's hair. So it falls to us to reverse engineer these myths and these legends and cartoons and movies and commercials and everything to get to the root and the origins of what once was. This is what people saw in the sky. They saw a shield when they looked up, a protection, a protective dome, right? Or a bowl hanging down from the sky. And when it opened up, they saw these red lights inside of it and these plasma filaments coming out, and they would petrify things instantaneous due to the high electrical charge. They also saw grid patterns. See how like that shield has a little pattern all the way around it? I looked up grid patterns in the sky and I saw this article. Somebody posted, I saw an extremely bizarre, or had an extremely bizarre experience. I witnessed a hexagonal grid pattern in the sky. Has anyone else experienced this phenomenon? That was back in 2017. This person looked up into the sky and saw a grid pattern. I've heard that before. I think I've kind of skimmed through my comments and I vaguely remember some people mentioning having seen hexagons in the sky. Now, I ask myself, since I'm doing truth in movies, do I remember seeing movies that have hexagons in the sky? I sure do. We decoded Kong. The movie Kong, Skull Island, I can't remember which one this is, but Kong throws a tree up at the dome. They made it look like this was the actual Earth. He throws a tree and it breaks a hole in his dome where they were keeping him captive. And that dome is made up of all of these little hexagons all over the place. You see them all over there. You can see them on the other side as well, a little bit better. And then I also remember seeing this in the movie The Hunger Games, when Katniss shoots up her arrow that happens to be a blue flame that goes up to an apex dome. This is also in a video game that I play called Rocket League. Now that I think about it, I just now thought of that. Anyways, besides the point. If you play Rocket League, you already know what I'm talking about. But anyways, this is the apex dome. And it is full of hexagons, as you can see there, right? Some people immediately jump to, because I've seen other people make this connection. They're like, oh, it's the Matrix. It's a computer program. Well, why would it be hexagons? It could be any shape if it's a computer program. This is also from the same movie. But why hexagons in particular? Why that particular shape? Well, I suppose I put forth the theory that the dome is made out of ice. Now, if it is hexagonal in structure, and we have these creatures that come out of it, then this is where we get the bee symbolism. These are the bees of heaven. The bee in antiquity was a holy insect that was not an actual bee. It was balls of plasma that would come around and sting people, or it would shock them, basically, okay? And they would also leave this byproduct because the plasma, especially as it passes through the atmosphere, which after rapid depressurization of the atmosphere, all the atmosphere gets sucked out when the dome opens. Okay, so the dome will crack open, the atmosphere will get sucked out. When that happens, it will create fog and mist around the world, which means the atmosphere itself is very wet and moist. When you mix the atmosphere that is very wet and moist with things like pollen from all of the world's plants and stuff, and then you shock it and you run an electrical charge through it, it will create a viscous byproduct, which is called, in the movies, ectoplasm, or the goo that comes off of ghosts and stuff, right? So these bees go around and they create this sort of honey of the gods, which you know is manna, which I also talk about in my second book, Return to Hyperborea. Now, we have the beehive symbolism, right? The queen bee, the beehive, the bees coming down and invading from space, which probably also looks like a honeycomb pattern or a cave. Like we are one entrance to many different caves in, different conduits that go throughout the mind of God. But we have this beehive haircut, which also goes back to the cone head shape. And this is not just from the 70s. I mean, this picture is. I also have honeycombs, like the actual cereal just happens to be right behind this lady, by the way. But it's the beehive haircut. Marge Simpson also has this beehive haircut. Why is that? Because she just likes ducking when she goes through the hallways and door entrances and stuff? Or is it because her head is probably very large? Big, huge, bulbous alien eyes, big, huge, long head, Now the hexagon. The hexagon is the easiest shape for ice crystals to take. It is the natural shape that they naturally want to adhere to. Can they take other shapes? Yes, they can, but they default to the hexagon. It says here, I typed in what is the most natural shape for ice to take, and it says the most natural and common shape for ice crystals to take is a hexagonal prism. That means that they will bond together and create little hexagons together. But it's not just ice either. Like we talked about with the basalt columns and pillars and stuff, it's just liquid whenever it freezes or petrifies. But yeah, that helps me to understand why people see these hexagon shapes or even projected images that look like hexagons in the sky, because the sky itself is a hexagonal lattice of frozen vapors or gases that turn into ice. The sky is made out of ice, basically. Now, they make some comments about the astronauts drinking Tang when they first went to the moon, and then he just kind of jokes to themselves. They go, "Astronauts to the moon." It's so ridiculous because they're laughing at each other like they know. Okay, yeah, astronauts went to the moon. Another moon reference as well. But they're laughing at the fact that the astronauts went to the moon. They damn well know that the moon is a luminary, right? They would know that if they came in through the dome above us, that there is no rock floating around called the moon. So they all start laughing, have a nice little laugh at the inside joke. Oh, and then the dad yells at the daughter Conehead and says, "You are wearing far too much lip and cheek enhancement." And she says, "Mom, my makeup looks okay, doesn't it?" So this whole concept, remember how I said we want it to look like them, the elven standard of beauty. But inversely, and contrary-wise, they want it to look like us, very pale, very pasty and white. So they invented makeup. They painted their faces and they would put blush on to have more like blood rushing through them and look a little bit darker and more tan and stuff. This is from the Book of Enoch, which used to be considered a part of the Bible and is actually quoted in the Bible. This is from chapter 8, verse 1. It says, "And Azazel," or Azazel, which was the leader of the fallen angels, "taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates and make known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them," which is mining, basically, "and bracelets and ornaments." I talk all about why they needed humans to mine for these things in my books. "And the use of antimony and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones and coloring tinctures." This is makeup. The aliens, the fallen angels, however you want to see them, demons, I don't care what word you use. It wasn't humans. It was something otherworldly that taught us to beautify ourselves by painting on our face and stuff. Meanwhile, they would paint on their face to look more blush, to look like they had a little more sun or to fit in more, right? So as he's fitting in, his nickname that his neighbor calls him, you can't see it, but it's Bel, B-E-L. Bel is short for the god of antiquity, the bull god or the bull-headed god named Baal, or pronounced Bahal. Bahal. It's more of a guttural. It's a B and then Chal. Bahal. Okay? But Baal, which is where we get the word ball from, actually. And I'll explain to you why. So let's break down the name Baal. I know some people are just like, oh, I said it. I can't stand that satanic name or whatever. Listen, let's go beyond the spookism, as some people would call it. Let's go beyond, like, you know, letting it frighten us and scare us. Let's investigate and find out what Baal is. Not who Baal is, but what Baal is. Now, if you break down the spelling in Hebrew, most people spell it today B-A'-A-L, Baal. But it's not. It does not have 4 letters. It has 3 letters. That's just a forced pronunciation. The first letter is B, or Beit, and it means house. Literally means house. The next 2 letters are the root of the word. So this is the prefix. This is the root of the word. Ba'al. Now, the first letter is Ayin, which literally is a picture of an eyeball. The next letter is Lamed, or El, and it is literally a picture of a shepherd's staff, and it implies leadership. So, together they mean or convey over or upon. So, the name Baal, people will say it means Lord or whatever. This is why it means Lord, because there is a house above us, over us. There is a house above us. That house is an eye that leads, the lead eye of the world. It is the apex dome. It is the source of the projection that you call the moon. That was what people called the Lord in antiquity. There were many different lights in antiquity. Before we had this one sunlight and one moonlight, there was lots of different types of lights, lots of different suns, lots of different, you know, strange phenomenon that some people worshipped and stuff. The letter Beit, or B, also as a prefix, implies at. So a place that is up there or at above is what Baal literally means. It's also considered a house in the sky, or you could say a dwelling place in the heavens, a dwelling place in the sky. This comes from the Hopi prophecy of the blue star Kachina. It says here, the dwelling place in the sky, or the heavens, is the 9th and the last sign before the great purification. That's what I call the plasma apocalypse. Often interpreted as man-made. This dwelling place is often interpreted by the Hopi as being man-made, an artificial structure that will fall to the earth like Humpty Dumpty's ass. Excuse my language. With a great crash. This is Humpty Dumpty, okay? Anyways. The Hopi talk about that. It literally says this in the Bible. In the book of Revelation, it talks about New Jerusalem, a new dwelling place up in the heavens coming down to the earth. Revelation chapter 21, the dwelling place in the sky refers to New Jerusalem, a holy city that descends from heaven to a new earth. Now, you're probably asking yourself, how can people live in New Jerusalem if it crashes down to the earth and breaks like Humpty Dumpty? There are 2 cycles. One cycle, that ice, which is probably more than just ice, okay? It's probably land and stuff too. But it slows it. First of all, it doesn't just fall at free fall speed because there's atmospheric depressurization and that needs to reach equilibrium. And when it does, things float back down, okay? If you get sucked up super high, you will float back down. You're not going to just fall all of a sudden. Everything floats back down. One cycle, because of the magnetism and the magnetic island that's below it, it actually catches it in midair and repels it and causes that island to float in the sky at the center of the world. And it doesn't crash for a time, for a long time. But in the cycle, whenever the world floods and that island goes underwater and that magnetic island is removed, Humpty Dumpty will fall and will crack open and will break and contribute to the flooding of the world. Here is another example of Baal, or Bahal, however you'd like to pronounce it. Here's how it's traditionally spelled as well. Oftentimes you'll see antlers, horns sticking up out of them. That's because this is the apex dome as seen from directly below. This would be like the blue beam or the energy that rises up, those geoplasmas that shoot up out of Mount Maru. And depending on which way the light is, remember the moon goes through its phases. The moon is a projection of this, which means this goes through phases. The apex dome itself is going through phases as the plasma on the other side is spiraling around it, giving us crescents or horns or a holy cow or the bull at the center of the world or whatever, this bull shape. It's also seen as the bull's eye, the one eye symbolism, the all-seeing eye in the sky, etc. You can see it in this Egyptian medallion that shows this bug, and the bug is just symbolic of the Atlas pose, the arms up. That blue beam spreads its arms as it goes up, by the way. And this is the apex dome. This is the side that is lit up. This is the rest of the dome, or ball, up there in the sky. If you see it three-dimensionally, and you imagine it must be a planet or Nibiru or something, you're going to see that as a ball in the sky, and you're going to call it a ball. But it's not. It is a dome. It is an inverted dome or bowl that is hanging down from the firmament. Here's another example of it. So shamans would emulate this in their style of dress with headdresses and feathers and stuff, and they would have their own elven standard of beauty, except it wasn't elven as in the humanoids that I was referencing earlier. It is the phenomenon, the electromagnetic phenomenon, the plasma phenomenon that they were trying to emulate, wearing these headdresses and totem poles and stuff like that. Now, get back to the movie. I love these rabbit holes. Can I get a thumbs up if you guys like rabbit holes too when you're researching? Anyways, the mom is at the store shopping and they're gossiping, right? And the human chick, her friend, is like, all men are pigs. All men are pigs. Where does that come from? I mean, seriously, where does that come from? Why pigs? Why not say all men are lizards? Or all men are, I mean, sometimes they do say dogs, but we've already discovered that one. We already know the substance behind the dog thing, right? And by the way, a lot of these people with hypertrichosis, especially those from antiquity, if they're from the north and they're as energetically charged as I suspect, they would also have very charged, high sex drives. So they would look hairy, be full of testosterone, and have very high sex drives. And if they live long enough, they'll probably start growing horns. As I've already showed you guys many times, human beings can grow tails and horns. So, all men are dogs? Check. We get that. Genetic mutations. All men are pigs? Well, I covered that one too. This is the most shout outs I've ever given myself. Ever. Man, that's okay. Every once in a while, you gotta take some pride in what you do. Anyways, look for this one on my channel if you want to know about the pig people and how they're going to return to the world through genetic mutations. Who are the pig people? What are they? Did they actually have pig people? Have humans looked like pigs in the past? Yes, definitely have. Here's another clip showing you a modern pig person. I'll just zoom in on that one real quick, but you can check out the video for more information. I don't know why I was wearing sunglasses on that one. Maybe I'm photophobic. Maybe I'm a vampire. Anyways, here's a modern pig person. Boom. And we get back to the movie. Now, this woman, the redhead, by the way, we've covered redhead symbolism oftentimes. Lilith. God, it's like the hardest name to say, Lilith. I hate that. It's so hard to say Lilith for me. Anyways, she wants to basically get with the alien, right? And there's nothing hidden about this. These are the alien beings that drop down out of the sky, the fallen angels, the white devils, however you want to call them, that came down and they wanted to mate with the women of the earth. This is Genesis chapter 5. How is it that they could mate unless they are compatible? How is it that they're compatible unless they're human? They are humanoid. They mated with humans. Now, these were said to be giants. What does that mean? Humans used to be giant. Sorry, but it doesn't work it doesn't work the other way, okay? They have to be comparable in size within a certain height range, okay? That means going far back in time, humans also used to be gigantic. We are tiny these days. Humans shrink in size every over the centuries. They're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Only in this last time do we see a short burst, a slight increase in the size, and that's because the ocean itself is heating up, because the sun's heating up, and it's releasing all of its oxygen. So, who are the aliens? I put forth the theory that they are us. A lot of people think the aliens are like us from the future and they're time travelers or whatever. I don't really personally subscribe to time travel as it is portrayed in fiction, but I do believe in a change of scenery that makes you feel like you've traveled through time. I do believe in alternate Earths out there that have the exact same genetic sequencing and the exact same coding, but have gone through different scenarios and made different decisions and therefore different timelines out there in the fractalverse. I do believe in that, but that's the only thing that makes sense to me, aside from like genetic manipulation or whatever. But if they came down and they did it the old-fashioned way, they're humans. They have to be. You know what I mean? So the female, she starts to dress up like a human. She puts up on the makeup. She puts on a wig, and I'm going to talk about the wigs too, to look more seductive, to look more beautiful, because the aliens actually see us as beautiful. When we looked back and we saw them as so strong and healthy and robust and full of sexual promiscuity and energy and stuff, and we thought that was beautiful. We thought that was attractive. They looked at us and they thought we were attractive. So it was, a mutual attraction that was happening. Now, let's take a look at what she's wearing here, right? Especially that wig. And keep in mind, like, the very albino look that I have talked about. Think about back in antiquity, after the Dark Ages had passed. Now, the Dark Ages were really an age of light. It was a golden age, I believe. And it lasted for about 1,000 years. After that golden age, we had the rise in the Victorian era and the age of exploration and stuff. And people were trying to, plant their feet in the world and figure things out. But specifically, we had this Gothic look where all of these peoples, not just white people, people from around the world, put white paint all over their faces or powdered their faces or whatever. Even African tribal members, even Aboriginals, painted their faces white. And I believe that had to do with the elven standard of beauty, like I was talking about earlier. These people they powdered their faces super, super white. And they will tell you it's because if they thought they had a suntan, that it meant they were workers and they were out in the sun all day long. I don't think the sun was really around that much during that particular time. There was a lot of fog and a lot of mist and, you know what I mean, stuff like that in the world. They had these huge wigs. They had fake hair. What's a wig? It's fake hair. Why do you have fake hair? Why do people today get wigs and wear fake hair? For the most part, there's exceptions. There's different reasons. For the most part, though, the number one reason is because people don't have hair. And they want some. They want to look like they have hair. These people are missing hair. Could it be that they are irradiated? That there's still lingering radiation in the world back then? And that their hair was falling out? Or clumpy? You know what I mean? Coming out in different parts? People would put on all this powder and stuff. Just like that video I referenced earlier, where the guy talks about putting on the red clay or whatever. Same concept. But they're powdering their faces, putting on all this white stuff. That looks very much like when you go to the beach and you put all that sunscreen all over you because they're photophobic. These people are related to those other tribes, and these are their offspring and offspring and offspring. They're still slightly photophobic. It's also becomes a sort of tradition over time. And then they put the blush on there on top of everything, right? Just like the Elu or the elves or the alien or the aliens did at one point in time. They also had these huge hairstyles, and this is a really weird fad too. You might not catch it at first, but take a look at this portrayal of Queen Elizabeth. First and foremost, she looks like Pennywise. There's obviously killer clown symbolism happening here. Shout out to Understanding Conspiracy. But look at her ruffly neck, right? The ruffles all around her neck, protecting her from the sun, just completely covered. Basically, it looks like she's wearing sunscreen, right? The flaming red hair. Then we have these huge hairdos that went way up. Like, how do you even get the hair to do that? Did they even have hairspray back then? You know? Or did they just have big heads? It's worth asking the question, right? Now, the thing that you might not have noticed is how far back, and notice the cone hat, right? Notice the veil over the face to protect from the sunlight, but still be able to see. How far back, look at the eyeballs, does her hairline go? How far back does your hairline go? Let me ask you that. Just go ahead and feel it right now, wherever you are. Mine's right about here, okay? This chick's forehead goes all the way back to like there. This was a fad. This was a fashion. This was the elven standard of beauty. Either they naturally didn't start growing their hair until much further back because their head went further back, or if they didn't have that particular shape of a skull, a cone head, they would emulate it and they would shave their existing hairline way far back to make it look like they had bigger heads. Isn't that something? Isn't that weird? You see the same thing in the Dark Crystal. Those little elven race or whatever, they want to be like the Skeksis, so they start dressing like them and everything. Same thing here. It's a never-ending story. It just keeps happening over and over and over again. So in antiquity, people would shave their hairline, where normally it would be like right about here or something. They would shave it back a couple of inches so they could look more like the aliens, the big-headed humanoids from another place. She might even have horns. Sometimes you see this double cone at the top. I'm telling you, when human beings live long enough, they will grow horns. I mean, I'm not guaranteeing like it's a guarantee you will, but I'm saying I've seen a lot of pictures of humans with horns. Real ones, not prosthetics or any of that stuff. Real actual horns growing off of people's heads, off their faces, all kinds of places. Lots of pictures. And it tends to happen when people get up towards 90, 100 years old. So it's probably a secondary stage of puberty for those who do live past 100, is my guess. Now, we get back to the dad. He's dressed up like Abraham Lincoln. That's pretty telling to me as far as the aristocracy or the presidency, at the very least, in the United States, and the leaders of the United States, the founders, the people that just happened to come here, nomadic wanderers claiming to be explorers, you know, representing some other country or whatever, and they're wearing the top hat. The top hat was one of the iconic symbols and pieces of clothing for this relatives of the nobles, the nobilities, the dragon lords, the vampire race. Why did they need big, huge top hats? To cover their big, huge, frickin' cone heads. You see that? Don't you think that they would be hot in the Wild West dressed up like this too? You know? I imagine that the temperature was a bit cooler back then. Not that they were just prude or, you know, didn't want to show off their neck or whatever, but I think that it was practical. I think it was probably a lot cooler than we thought it was, going further back in time. So this is one of the Rothschilds, or the Red Shields is what that name actually means. They worship the red shield above. So that apex dome glows red. There's a part of it that looks kind of bluish, part of it that glows red. You could also call it purple too, but it is the rosy cross. Oftentimes it will reflect the Garden of Eden below, which has a cross on it. And they'll see a rosy cross in the sky. That's where the Rosicrucians get their name from. And they'll often wear a red carnation, a red rose, something like that, a red flower of some kind that will represent that blossoming red bowl hanging up there in the sky. Now, these guys are basically ice, modern ice. They're basically the guys that are trying to get rid of illegal immigrants, aliens, right? And they're pretending to be Jehovah's Witnesses. So they knock on the door and they're like, can we tell you the good news? Do you agree that the world is headed towards a terrible calamity? Calamity is another word for apocalypse or cataclysm. He says, most definitely. As in fact, I have direct personal knowledge that this is so. He knows all about the plasma apocalypse. He knows that the dome is going to open up because his friends are on the way. And they just played a movie recently called Begonia where they show you the aliens got to pop the dome. Or, you know, that's how it's seen or whatever. So he knows that the dome itself is going to break open, symbolically speaking, and that will usher in atmospheric depressurization, that will make the world shake, that will lead us into an apocalyptic era where geoplasmas are erupting from the caves and volcanoes and stuff of the world, lights stretching up to the heavens, looking like they're holding up the sky itself, which looks much closer because now it's illuminated and now you can see the barrier that is between us and the worlds beyond. He says, so, what do you know of the doom awaiting this planet? Now he's asking them, what do you know about the apocalypse? Then his daughter comes out. She's going to a costume party. Look how she's dressed. Nobility. The veil at the top of the conical hat to put over them to protect them from sunlight when they go outside. That's what that's for. It's not just a decoration. It's not just pretty and fancy for no reason at all. It's practical. It serves a purpose. So let's take a look at some pictures from antiquity of nobility that had their either had pointy heads in the back or shaved the top part all the way up like we discussed, and they have these huge cone hats with these veils that hang down from the sides. You can see them over here, over here. This lady has one over here. Different styles. Here's another style. Oftentimes they would actually put little hoods too on these hats. This is where the hoodie came from. The hoodies, this hoodie that I'm wearing is actually kind of small. I like huge hoods, but that's how they used to be. When you see like wizards and stuff in the movies, they have these huge robes with big old hoods and they just toss them over. That hood was to protect them from sunlight. It wasn't to, you know, make them all shadowy and mysterious or whatever. And here it is again. Now, this is starting to look familiar. I mean, she's kind of dressed like Santa Claus, right? Very Christmassy look. A wizard's hat. The same thing. The conical hat. The pointy head of the wise man. The wise people. The people that lived for hundreds and hundreds of years and accumulated a lot of knowledge just through experience alone. Whatever they happen to research and study is just a bonus in addition to their lifespan. The wizards, growing their hair out very long, post-apocalyptic survivors, huge beards, conical hats, witches, the female version, the knowledgeable one, the wise ones, the witches, the ubers, oftentimes painted a different color, shown as having something on their skin or maybe being a different color or something. She even has a veil hanging off of her hat. You see that? Coneheads. The dunce cap. The dunce cap, some of you, if you're younger, you don't know what that is. If you watch old cartoons, you might see that they would put a bad person in the corner or a bad character in the corner, make them face the corner, and they would put this conical hat on them, make them stare at the wall. They used to torture kids in these schools. It's crazy with the things they would do. They would physically beat up children in these schools with like objects and stuff. It's crazy. Some people had to go home when they were beat so bad. Anyways, so the conical hat was put on to a troublemaker or an unintelligent child who was getting their answers wrong, or a disruptive child. And they were oftentimes placed in the corners, often a paper bag that was just a makeshift conical hat. The idea was that the conical hat, because it's for wizards and witches and nobility and stuff, that it was associated with wisdom, actually, and that it would somehow impart. The ether would like go into the person's head. Maybe that's what it was. So they put these conical hats not as a way to single someone out or ridicule them or make fun of them, but in the hopes that they would draw energy from the atmosphere, from the ether, and that they would become more intelligent. Now, if you have a longer skull and a bigger head, I imagine you have a bigger brain that could possibly do a bit more. I don't know. Here we have some examples of different fraternal organizations, colleges, sororities, religious organizations that all revered and wore the conical hat and variations of it as a form of wisdom. But over time, that started to become skewed as the energy in this world flipped around. And we went from being right-laned predominant to left-brain predominant. And our whole vision, our whole view, our whole perception of the world that we live in flipped upside down. And everything that once represented the ones we worshipped, the ones we looked up to, the nobles, the leaders, the wizards, the witches, etc., all became satire. All became funny. All became ridiculous, as it's not real. Those are just stories. They're children's stories. Those are old wives' tales. That's just a myth. And so we made fun of it. And people dressed up like nobility. And people dressed up like the alien beings that came down, those alien giants with pasty pale white skin. And they dressed up exactly like them. And we can't even tell the difference today. They are called clowns. They wear the pointy hats. They wear the neck protection and the ruffled feathers. They wear the sunscreen. They paint the face. They have overly large clothing because that's the size that the giants would wear. They have the witch hats, the wizard hats of antiquity. These things survive the test of time. If you have the eyes to see, you can reconstruct history. And you can see it with new light. And that actually makes me feel like living in the world today is more exciting. I get to see things with new eyes. I was talking with one of my subscribers the other day, and I was just sharing with her how, a change in perspective can really turn a bland and boring world that's kind of crappy into something like seeing it with like childlike eyes and going, wow, and really wondering at the world when you see more of the truth. Instead of focusing on the deception, focus on the truth. People can get down at first because they're deceived. They're like, oh man, I've been lied to. Oh man, I was told something else. But you're focusing on what's wrong. Focus on the solution, not the problem. Focus on the truth. Anyways, they're about to get arrested by ICE basically, and their mothership arrives. Here's the classic eye in the sky, the mothership. This is the apex dome. This is just symbolic of us being able to see the firmament itself, or the ego up there in the sky, and the blue energy rising up to it. Here it is again, just another example. Now, they're in the spaceship and they're flying past the moon, our moon. They show it to you right here, and they clip it and they hit it, and the moon explodes right there, breaks into pieces. I talk about this a lot. This is Project A119. Your governments are going to blow up the moon. They are not sending rockets and missiles and explosives and all kinds of stuff up there to go into low Earth orbit and to just go in circles around the Earth forever and do nothing but backflips and float around and, release all kinds of water in the ISS around electrical equipment. And there's all kinds of problems with that. They are going to blow up the moon. The moon being the physical substance behind the projection that we associate with the moon. The real moon is the apex dome. The real moon is that portion that hangs down off of the firmament itself. I'm just using these words loosely, okay? I'm using words people can understand. There's a dome above our world. At the apex, the top center of that dome, is a bowl that hangs down. It's a portion of that same bowl or dome, but it hangs down. It droops downwards towards us. It casts its own image into our sky. They're going to blow that open. That takes you to, what do they call that? Project Anchor, where the atmosphere will everything will float for 7 seconds. I'm not saying I agree with the date or the time, but if they do know how to blow up the firmament, even for a short time, because it won't stay, if they blow a hole in the firmament, it won't stay a hole for very long. They'll have a short window because it will reconstitute itself once that electromagnetic pulse dissipates, and those gases will refreeze once more. But they can feasibly and possibly cause a little tiny mini cataclysm by putting a hole in the firmament for different reasons. And if that happens, better hold on. So they blow up the moon, they take a chunk out of the moon, and then they go to their planet. And this is where all the people are gathering. All these aliens are gathering at this mountain, which is a volcano. They show you the inside of it. This is Mt Maru on the red planet, which is our world. Mars, the red planet, Nibiru, all that stuff, that's our world after the apocalypse. Okay? There'll be so much oxygen coming up from within the Earth. All of those beams, those blue beams of ionized oxygen, they will cause rust all over the place. The world will be an orange-red place, deserty place too, because all the oceans will get sucked up. Anyways, this is Mt Maru, also known in the Book of Enoch as Mount Hermon, or Har-Mon, which means mountain of the moon. It's Mount Zion. It is all the quintessential holy mountains. Mountains of the meeting places, mountains of the gods, Mount Sinai, Sin, or the Sin part of Sinai, Sign, that's an ancient word for the moon. That's the moon god, Sin, or Sign, you could say. Anyways, this is the gathering place, the holy gathering place mountain, where all the Coneheads, aliens, etc., elven race are all meeting to go inside of the thing, and they're there for an event. They're all excited for this event. This lady says when the 3 moons align, the Mel that lighted the crescents causes a Garthok to emerge. So they're just using funny, whimsical, alien, nonsensical language, but it has meaning to it. She's saying when there is a syzygy, or a triple eclipse up in the heavens, which they'll show you here, right there, which is that symbol that he used for his company, right? This represents where he is from. When there is a syzygy, when there is a triple eclipse in the sky, there's a story of this in almost every culture. In Hinduism, there's a whole story about an arrow being shot up straight into these 3 cities. It's called the story of Tripura, Tripura. And there's this beam that shoots right up into these 3 floating cities or whatever. Anyways, they come together. They light up, they come together, and you can see the apex dome in the sky, exactly as I have described it, tiered. It's the triple crown. It's the triple layer, the triple rings, the 3-ring circus or circles. This is Atlantis. And you're looking at it, and the light is only on one side because the light on the other side is lighting up that side of it. This is what projects its image into our sky. Now, depending on how the plasma moves and where it is inside of that apex dome will depend upon what we see down here. That's something to think about when you want to try to figure out the mechanics. I'm looking at you, Ian. Ian's my buddy. He's one of my subscribers over in Australia. He loves trying to figure out the mechanics. I love it. We chat every once in a while. Anyways, that's the apex dome. That's Atlantis. That's all the stuff that I've just been sharing with you. Now, here's this weird monster creature or whatever, right? Now, you might want to take note, all right, for all the people that love this weird fads of sticking nose rings like a pig in your face. I'm not a big fan of it. You can do it if you want to. But, you know, that's what they do to monsters and pigs and stuff. Like, not just in the movies, but in antiquity too. It means you're a slave. It's crazy. Anyways, monsters come out whenever this happens. Inner Earth creatures, gigantic reptilians. Shout out to Fleur Brun. Reptoids. I don't know. She just popped in my head when I said reptoid. So reptilians, gigantic reptiles that live in the earth, gigantic insects, gigantic animals, gigantic people, etc. They come to the surface. Anyway, so this guy emerges during basically what is the apocalypse. You also have this same triple eclipse in like a million movies. So this is in Pitch Black, the Vin Diesel trilogy, Chronicles of Riddick, right? Which we also decoded all 3 of those. You got this in 3 Body Problem, obviously. You got this in The Dark Crystal. There's a million references to this triple eclipse. It will happen in our world. This is not fantasy. This is reality. You just forgot about it, which is what makes it fantasy. Now, he's fighting this monster, and he shoves this javelin into its eye. That's the beam that hits the eye in the sky. So there's a beam of light that will shoot directly up into this bullseye with these antlers. See how it's got like antlers or whatever? Looks like horns. There's a beam of light that will come up out of the volcano that you're looking out of right now. You're inside the volcano looking up. That ionized oxygen will shoot up and it will hit the eye. It will put out the eye, just like you see here. And that's how you'll see a lot of this symbolism in the movies too. So he puts out the eye. This is also where we get the word Nemo from. There's an ancient story about a hero that put out the Cyclops' eye, and he said his name is Nemo, which means nobody, right? That old story. Now, to defeat him, he played a lot of golf on Earth. So he gets a rock, and he uses his little staff, and he makes a little makeshift golf club. And he looks at the monster, takes a huge swing. By the way, the monster sees red because this is the time when monsters exist, when the light in our world turns red. All the sky will turn red one day. Everything will go through a color spectrum shift, starting all over again. We won't have all these different colors that we have. Our world will become monochrome. And then it will ease back into more colors over time. Anyways, so he takes a big swing with his golf club and he hits the rock. That rock, the monster opens its mouth and starts choking on the rock. Exactly how we talked about at the beginning with the Kronos symbolism. Kronos was that same god that wanted to eat Zeus and all of his siblings. So he sucks them all up into the sky, starts eating them. But they hid Zeus, guess where? In a cave. Guess which cave? This cave. This is where Zeus hides. This is where Zeus is born. This is where Zeus dies. This is where Zeus lives. And many other savior figures and gods. They're here. They just have different names. Anyways, so he hits the rock up into this monster's mouth that's trying to kill him. And then that's pretty much the end of the movie. And they fade out, just showing you the moon that has a chunk taken out of it. Oh yeah, that reminds me, I do want to give a huge shout out. There's something wrong with my software program that I used to make my credits, which is why I haven't shown the new credits yet, which I feel bad about. But I am working on it, and I'm pretty close to getting it fixed up. So for those people who signed up for the new credits, all of you guys, first, my deepest apologies. I'm sorry. I am working on it. Like I said, I've had a lot of other projects going on too. So hopefully I'll get that done soon. But I do want to give you guys a shout out, starting with Maddie Ice, who joined the YouTube membership. So I do have more membership tiers on YouTube because some people said that they wanted to support me, but they don't use Patreon. So I added some tiers back to YouTube just for those people. So Maddie Ice and Jason Pretty, who is also on my Patreon as a supporter. So hey, high five, Maddie Ice, and high five to Jason Pretty. Thank you guys so much. I also want to give a huge shout out to the people, since I'm not doing the credits. I mean, I'm still going to roll the old last month's credits because a lot of you guys are still on there. But I want to give a shout out to the following people on my Patreon: Jason P, Nikki Ponting, Heather, Tia Kisa, Kelly, Hugo, I Am, Dr. Hugh Maniel, Aurora of Truth, Namer, Freight Train, Eddie Fox, Hannah, Atlas the Maverick, Michelle Dickin, Julie Miller, Kathy Reed, Venus, Amy Cogan, Stephanie McGuire, Gabriel Spark, Jen Cardno, Sharon Searley, Crystal Cat, Trish Clark, Nancy Ross, Sylvia, Sarah Hostkotter, We Ain't Having It, Par, and Par is also one of my special sponsors on Patreon. Thank you, Par. Carpet Martin, Ryan, Angel Love Bud, Donna Coben, Annalisa, Beverly Pyron, Philip Sutherland, not Sutherland, but Sutherland, Jen, Alicia Baines, Challenge Consensus, Jim Donovan, as always, It's Pinecone, and Benjamin Anthony. I want to say a special thanks to all of you. Now, if you're interested, here's my own little shout outs, okay, to my work. My books. If you're interested in my books, go to JayDreamerZ.com. You can get them autographed for a little bit more than they cost on Amazon. And I'll send you a whole bunch of really sweet merch on top of that, okay? Or you can get the vanilla copy on Amazon. Obviously, you want to check out my website, JayDreamerZ.com. If you're interested in these topics and these theories and stuff, there's countless hours of information and visuals and audio files and all kinds of stuff on my website for you. And there's a free 24-hour cram session there too. If you want to be a part of my new show, my series, Chasing the Apocalypse, if you want to have early access to it, if you want all of the episodes when they first come out, there is a diamond ticket that you can purchase on my other website, which is chasingtheapocalypse.com. Chasing theapocalypse.com. You can go check it out. You don't have to, there's no pressure. You don't have to buy anything. You don't have to purchase anything. That's just for people who are sponsors and they want to show early support and they want to get all the stuff all together for, you know, basically what's going to be one low price, because we're going to film a lot of content and we're going to release a lot of different episodes, a lot of behind the scenes and bloopers and journaling and video journals and all kinds of fun stuff. So that is available. If you do purchase a ticket, I will be sharing those tickets as I did at the beginning of this show. And I've also put them permanently onto my website. So once again, thank you to all of my sponsors, all the ticket holders, all the people that are making my personal dream come true to basically be Indiana Jones or Indiana J, travel around the world and make sweet videos for you guys to share with you as I go boots on the ground, hands on, to actually go to these places and research for myself. I want to say thank you very much from the bottom of my heart. Until next time, I'm JayDreamerZ saying good vibes and goodbye.
Thank you.